This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting series of episodes that we are covering in this series of CXOs, founders, and co-founders. Now, quite often in this series, we haven't had a repeat guest because I always would like to pick up a new brain in this series, learn from somebody new in terms of CXO, founder, or co-founder. But I actually reached out to a guest that we already invited a year ago. And he accepted our invite because we wanted to talk to him something regarding a new brand that he's responsible for. There's a new brand launch that he has led recently. It's called GenZ, which is related to this interesting concept of human success. Apparently, I get to work with that brand on a day-to-day basis, so I understand the implications of what that brand has got on its customers. But I wanted to hear it from the special guest for today. That's Robin Daniels. Welcome to the episode today, Robin.
Thank you.
Great to have you again.
Thank you. I was excited to be back. I feel like we could probably do 10 episodes and still not run out of things to talk about. So excited to be back here.
Yeah. So why not we start off with what has changed in the last 1 year since the time we chatted? Because last time I remember when we chatted, we talked about leadership and you had just joined the company. And now we're 1 year down the line when you have kind of spent around 11, 12 months and there's a new brand name altogether. How has been your experience in the last 1 year?
Well, first of all, it's been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the team that I came in and have been working with for the last, as you said, a year or so, has just been great. We've been through so many transformative moments in the last, I would say, year or so. We've grown the business over 50%. We're a very global company. In 2023, we grew to over 50%. We acquired our first tech company in 2023 as well that expanded our suite out. And then, of course, now, as you mentioned, we've kind of relaunched or rebranded the company. And it certainly, I was, of course, heavily involved, but it was a huge team effort. But the reason we got there, honestly, is because we started out as a company that was really offering a learning platform to the world. And we've been doing that very successfully for the last many years, over a decade, actually. And oftentimes, I've been around startups for a very long time, both working in them and also as an advisor for the last 25 years or so. And oftentimes when you have a startup, usually the company name and the product name is kind of the same thing. But it always kind of gets a little bit more difficult or a little challenging to have a bigger vision once you become a multi-product company. And I think we realized fairly early on when I joined that we were going to be a multi-product company. We weren't just going to offer an LMS solution anymore or a learning platform. We were going to also offer many more things in the realm of HR tech. And so when we acquired this company in the UK called Weekly 10 back in August of 2023, it became apparent to us that we had to move a little bit faster. We kind of rebranding the company because we didn't want people to think or customers to think that we were only offering a learning platform. And so then we went into kind of the engine room and thought, well, what is it that we are all about? Well, we thought about, there's this rise in AI that's happening in the world. And for a lot of people, it's very exciting. It can also seem a little bit intimidating for a lot of people. Is it going to take away my job? Is it going to be scary, outcomes and so on? But I also think, I'm an optimist and a glass half full kind of person. I think it gets so many great things that AI can be used for. And we thought, well, what's the opposite of artificial intelligence? It's really around human intelligence. And we want to become the company that really stands on the side of promoting humans to be the best version that they can be of themselves every day, doing whatever we can do to every day give that person that works in a company the skills, the opportunities, the growth, the development, the knowledge they need to be successful. And so we thought about, well, what's a word that comes to mind all the time? It's really around this idea of teaching. We are all where we are in our lives today because at some point somebody believed in us, invested in us, whether that's a teacher, a parent, a coach, a mentor, a teammate, or somebody. Usually somebody pushes us in a direction or gives us the skills and all, sometimes willingly and sometimes unwillingly, but usually you have a better outcome because of it. And we kept coming back to this word, teacher. And then we thought, well, what's a cool way of saying teaching or learning? And we kind of stumbled upon, of course, the word sensei from Japan. And we decided, well, we don't want to just take that word and appropriate it. We want to kind of put our own spin on it. How do we then combine that with other sources of words? So SAI, the last 3 letters of the word, means knowledge in Italian, actually. Sen, if you take those 3 first letters, it can mean kind of a state of calm or constant like peace with yourself. But the overall word sensai is kind of a play on the word sensei, which is kind of the word of teaching. It's a very respectful word as well. And so it's kind of a combination where it's not a carbon copy of a single word out there. And we were just very inspired by that, because again, it comes back to the idea of, how do we make people and humans more successful? Was by investing in them, by giving them the tools, skills, knowledge they need to be successful. But we're also at this point. So we launched that a couple of weeks ago to the world. But what we really want to do is we want to create a movement around this idea of human success. And of course, I don't think any of us are naive enough to think that if you just use a platform, that's going to change everything in your life. It's so much more than that. It's about mindset. It's about leadership. It's about culture. It's about, kind of the guidelines that you have and how you treat and promote people and all kinds of things. There's so much that goes into it. But at some point, you also do need a platform to help you, right? Because you need to actually put that into action. And that's, of course, where our company, Zensai, comes in. We are the software platform that can help you on a daily basis get to better outcomes by teaching you the right skills, connecting with the right people, reaching the right goals, and so forth. And we're just at the beginning of this journey. We want to expand that out over the next couple of years and decades to become an even more full suite promoting human success.
I think that's a really great concept, Robin, because I'm kind of, as I said, I work for this company on a day-to-day basis. So it is a real pleasure to work for a company where there is a sincere focus towards human success. And I guess one of your presentations that I was listening to recently was more towards this as well, that you were talking about how customer service got changed to customer success over the years. And similar to that, human resources, which was 10, 20 years ago, has got now changed to this new concept. So how would you define this new concept of human success if a normal individual or an organization is listening to this video on LinkedIn? How would you define the concept of human success that can be applied in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really requires us to take a step back and think about the evolution of how we've gotten to where we are today. So no matter what data you look at, and if there's any HR leaders listening to this or even business leaders, we see this data all the time. It's in the news pretty much every day. People are disconnected, they're unhappy, they want to quit their jobs, right? We see this, it's the same last year, same the year before, same the year before. So it's obvious that there's something that we are not doing well, as whether that's an organization or as a leader. There's something that we are missing that's not really solving for the underlying angst or anxiety that people are feeling. And so we think about the evolution of tech that's happened that's really around people. The first generation was really around what we would classify as traditional HR solutions. And if you kind of look at it nearly as a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first generation was really covering the basic needs, making sure you get paid, making sure you take your vacation, making sure you get your benefits and you're compliant with our policies and so on, right? Oh, that's GDPR policy or cybersecurity policy or harassment policy, whatever it is. So it's very much focused on the compliance and the kind of covering the basic needs. I think 20 years ago, probably, companies started realizing this is not enough to really solve for creating an environment where people feel like they have purpose, they're part of something bigger than themselves, that there's joy in work as well as not just output and outcome. And so we kind of thought, well, let's change it from HR to people and culture, right? And put a little bit of like a spin on it, put in some foosball tables and some ping pong tables, have kombucha on tap, free pizza nights, and the office became a much better place. And honestly, I think moving on from kind of the first generation that we saw of HR solutions and HR kind of thinking, it helped. I mean, I don't want to take away that the first generation wasn't important or won't be around. It's still important to make sure that people get paid and take their vacation, all that stuff. But then the second generation came along. We changed it to people and culture. It made things a little bit better. Like at least when you showed up to the office, it wasn't a soulless experience. I was the chief marketing officer for a company called WeWork, and we were at the forefront of providing office space that would enlighten and energize your spirit so you can actually do better work. Because it's so obvious that when people feel energized and excited, they do better work than if they're not. So it helped, but it honestly, if I'm completely honest, it didn't really address the underlying issues that all the data and was showing. And if you talk to anybody, that, but what you really want is you want to feel like every day you're learning something new, you're progressing towards your goals, you're every day like taking small steps towards whatever that goal is. And again, those goals are very individual. Sometimes, in my career, I've chased titles or money or more bigger teams or all kinds of things, right? And now that I'm older, those things matter less, maybe because I've achieved some of them. But so goals are very, sometimes again, you want bigger pay, or I want a different team, I want to move to a different part of the business, or I want to learn these skills so I can change my life and career and so on. So all this stuff in the first generation and second generation honestly didn't address any of that. It was kind of like this, the surface area. So I think the new generation this is why I'm so passionate about this. Feels like my whole life has led me to this moment, is around what I would classify as human success, getting every person to be the best version of themselves. And I'm only kind of really happy when we have changed every HR department, people and culture department to be the human success department. Because at the end of the day, we want every single person to feel like there's a purpose to what they do. And this is a very lofty goal. Even if we achieve 5% of this, 10% of this, I think it'll be worth fighting for. But we have to create a world where people can feel motivated, inspired, and feel like they're progressing towards them. Because I can guarantee you, when I see these studies that say that 70% of people are unhappy and want to quit their jobs, those people are not showing up every day doing the best work of their lives. They're just not, right? They're maybe doing the bare minimum, and they're probably doing what they're being asked for, but are they really bringing their full self? And we see also from data that companies that have figured out how to engage employees and how to invest in them and motivate them, they see much better innovation and ideas coming out from those employees. And the profitability and revenue growth from those companies are also much higher. So it's kind of a no-brainer. And again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, and if you ask most CEOs and business leaders, they'll probably nod along and go, people are our most important asset. Of course they are. And then they go right back to what they've always done: chase profits, chase growth, and so on. Again, super important, but all outcomes of you investing in your people to do the best work of their lives, right? You can't separate business success and people success. We used to be able to, right? Business success is all that matters. People are there just to enable that. Nowadays, I think it's very different. You have to have both. Business success without people success, long term, those people are not going to be happy. They're going to leave. And vice versa is not good either. You can have people who are super happy and playing ping pong every day and having free food and lunch. But if the business suffers because of it, that's not success either. It has to be a balance of the business and the people succeeding in union with each other.
Yep. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I talk to a lot of youngsters, people of my generation in Gen Z or millennial generation, one of the biggest things that I think you pointed out, Robin, beautifully, is the engagement part. People feel disengaged very easily from their jobs. I think most of the companies do pretty much the right thing when they're hiring people. They'll do all those kind of screening rounds, and they'll have those stringent measures around hiring people. But I think down the track, after 3-4 months, it's kind of a no direction policy where people just don't know, okay, so what's the next step for me, or what's the next training for me to do, or, where am I heading? Where is my career heading in this organization? And if they don't see that, it's obvious they'll start thinking that I can't see a future in this organization, so it's better to leave. And I think that's one of the biggest things which I see this product driving. But I want to bring in George into it. It's really interesting to bring in George here, because George can ask you a question from a very outsider perspective on what he thinks from an outsider's point of view on this interesting concept of human success.
I'll make a couple of comments, and then I want to ask Robin a question.
Yeah, of course.
I'd love to be able to say that I was ahead of my time when I was running a company. And I was, but the reason I was ahead of my time when I was running a company at the age of 32 was that I had worked with a fellow from the age of 19 and a half. And now I'm 68. So just to put this into perspective, right? We're talking about 40 something years ago. He had a profit share system.
Okay.
He had the staff engaged within the company, and he had a thing about if you've got a problem and you bring it to work, then bring it to my desk. because if you don't bring it to my desk, you're going to take it to your desk. So, in other words, if you've got a problem and it's come with you to work, come in and talk to me. Let's see what we can do, because I don't want it interfering with your daily work.
Yeah.
Now, when you stop and think about some of the stuff that you're talking about, which is revolutionary, Robin, we're talking about 48 years ago. 48 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild.
By the time I had become managing director of the company at the age of 32, we had 13 or 14 salespeople at that time. And the average tenure of our salespeople was 11 years.
Wow. Head of the game.
Now, in those days, if you had a salesman for more than 3 to 5 years, you would, you could just about get a gold watch at 5 years. Which I then carried on when I took over as managing director. I took on, and if you said that you work for me, you had to put 50 cents into the swear jar. And at the beginning, we made a lot of money for charity. But the reason for that was I wanted everybody to know they worked with me. Nobody works for me. You all work with me. So I was managing director for 5 years. And sadly, the founder and I had a falling out over morals and ethics, and I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. When I left, 10 people came with me. The staff that remained within 2 weeks brought management together and asked, they didn't ask, they demanded a pay rise. And the new managing director said, "We've not heard anything about this. Where did that come from?" And they said, "We used to work with George Mavros. Now we work for you." So for those people that are listening, this is not about patting myself on the back and bragging. It's to say this is what culture and this is what human success can do. How did we build that up? Because we were interested in our people. We were interested in their development.
Yeah.
I had my own PA when I was in the company, when I took over, and I told her that she would be with me for probably 7 or 8 years. And then after that, if she didn't find a job, I would sack her because our company could not offer a position that I knew that she could grow into.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she tried to resign after about 6.5 or 7 years, and I told her, "Stop being silly. You're not ready yet."
Yeah.
And then about 6 months later, I said to her, "Okay, now you can either go or I'll sack you." And we got her a job, and she's gone on to be a marvelous marketing person. But the question I want to ask you, Robin, human success, and we're all interested in human success. What do you do in the company when, and we'll just use him as an example, Sarab comes along.
Yep.
And you decide that really the company's not going to have a position to offer him commensurate with where you think he could go. So what does the company do then? If we're talking about we're interested in human success and we're interested in our staff success, and which is exactly what I did with this lady I was talking about, was Yvette. And I knew where Yvette's capabilities were, and within that structure, there just wasn't going to be a role that was going to be good enough for her. So where does your commitment to company or corporate commitment versus human success, where does that moral compass fall into place?
It's a great question, and just to kind of comment on some of the things. First of all, it's an amazing story you're sharing there. Just obviously very, very much ahead of the game. I also think some of the passion that I have for this is because I've had incredible leaders and mentors and people in my life, and also some really awful ones. I had a boss maybe 15 years ago who said I should be more of an asshole because I was too nice. I'm just like, if that's the kind of culture you want to create, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to turn into something that I don't want to be in the world. So, but in terms of your questions,
I may just interrupt you there. Yeah. When I left the company, the chairman of the board said to me, "Your problem is you're too close to your staff. You're too personal."
No.
3 weeks later, when they demanded a pay rise from him, and he rang me to say, "What's all this about?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm too close to my staff, so I'll leave you with that."
A few years ago, I wrote
that guy that talks about you being an asshole.
A few years ago, I wrote an article about. It was when I had reached. I turned 40, and I wrote kind of a roadmap for life, love, and happiness. And part of I said, there's many principles that have made me realize that made me happy and gives you the most joy. But the number one, by far, when you look back on all the jobs you've had, and I have quite a few, you don't always remember the projects or the high times. You remember the people. It's always the people. People first, right? People come first in everything. So to answer your question on what do you do for someone if there's just not they either don't have the skills or maybe there's not a role for them? It's a great question. So the company I worked for that handled this the best by far was LinkedIn, honestly. And they had this concept of next play. And so whenever somebody was ready for their next play, whether that was in the company or outside the company, we would celebrate that person. Because I've seen so many cultures where once that person says, I want to go here, either in the company or outside, that person kind of gets ostracized or being seen as maybe too ambitious, or they get kind of put in the corner or whatever. And then they kind of get shunned off from all the cool projects or whatever happens, right? So I love that model because it's like, whether you're with us for a year or 5 years or 10 years, we know it's not going to be forever. And we want you to enjoy your time here and celebrate where you go next. But in terms of where you go, so if you have somebody like Saurabh and you say, okay, well, he is very ambitious and he wants things in his life. If he has a good leader that he works for, that person should be able to do one of two things: either invest in his skills so he can get to the point where he needs to be in the company, if there's a future there, and if he's engaged and he likes the company and he likes what he does, he likes the mission of it, he likes the colleagues and so on, then you can invest in that person. And that might be some small things you can do on the hard skills or soft skills, or it can be some bigger things. But I think it's also fair to recognize that you've outgrown your place here. There's just nothing for you. You need to go somewhere else to spread your wings, right? Where you can try something new or have bigger responsibility. It's not that we don't like you anymore, but there's just not really room for you here. And both, I think, honestly, are really good. That's why I always think of it as for somebody to get to the next level, you need three things. Number one is you need to have clarity of your goals, because it's really hard to achieve greatness if you don't know what you're waking up trying to fight for every day. So that means that you and your manager have to sit down and have clarity on what it is you want to achieve. And you have to then achieve those goals or overachieve them quarter after quarter after quarter, not just once, because everyone can have a good quarter, but show excellence quarter after quarter. That's number one. Number two is the idea of acting as if you're at the next level. So if you want to go from being a senior manager to a director or director to a VP, start modeling your behaviors after somebody who's at the next level. What does that mean? It means that they might be taking on more responsibility. They might be more helpful. They might be working harder. They might be working smarter. There's but start modeling yourself. It's always a good sign when I see people kind of stepping up, even if they don't have the title. It shows great self-awareness, great leadership if they're starting to act as if they're at the next level already. But of course, that requires that you have clarity on kind of what the next level is, and you have some people role models in those other roles as well, other positions. That's number two. And number three is that you have to get a chorus of support around you. I can guarantee whenever it comes to deciding who should go into this more elevated or expanded role, or maybe a more senior role, it's rarely a decision that's made in isolation. I've been a leader for a long time. I know, George, you have too. It's rarely just me going, okay, now it's time. It's usually you sit with some colleagues and you talk about, is Saurabh ready for the next level? Should we give him more responsibility? So it's usually a team decision oftentimes, pretty much in my experience. And I can always tell which way the wind blows depending on the conversation. If the conversation goes, they bring up, let's say, Sarab and the conversation, yeah, I like him, but what has he done? What has he achieved? Or I'm not really sure what he's working on. I can always tell, like, oh, this is going to be dicey to get him to the next level. But the opposite is also true. Sometimes I bring up a person's name in one of these conversations and they go, oh, yeah, amazing person. Everyone loves him, always over delivers. Like, then I know it's kind of a slam dunk to go and get that person to the next level. But it requires that the leader, I think, to have that awareness and lean into and understand the motivation of the person. I mean, sometimes that comes back to like core fundamental motivation of a person. Sometimes they just want to be seen. Sometimes they want to get more money. Sometimes they want a different title because maybe their ego or pride, or maybe because whatever it is. And again, I've been there myself. But sometimes I want to get to the next level because I want to grow my skills and career and my responsibility and so on. You have to it starts with that, and then everything else I've talked about kind of comes, I think, as an outcome of that, because it's very hard to calibrate. I think so many leaders who come in, they often treat everyone on their team or in a company the exact same way, thinking that they all want the same. I just don't think that's true. And so we live in this world now, I think, where, yeah, I think engagement is one of the things that's really waning. And then I hear from leaders who talk about, oh, it's so tough to motivate people nowadays, and everyone's remote, and I don't see them anymore. I'm like, yeah, that's the job of a leader. Step up, man. This is what you get paid for. It's like it was never easy. If you think it was easy before, it's never been easy. It changes, but it's never been easy. And so it's not to say that it's a walk in the park every day. Of course, it's really easy, but I always remind people when I hear some of these complaints, like, you know what an honor and a privilege it is to be a leader. You know how many people want to get to that level of being a director or a VP or C-level and lead a team. It's such an honor and a privilege. So take it seriously, lean into it. Is it more work? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. But that's what you get paid to do. Anyway, I can rant on about this for a long time. Hopefully I answered a little bit of your question here.
Thank you.
So one of the things, Robin, that I wanted to talk about was related to the rebranding in a tough market condition. As much as I am a strong believer of driving positivity and optimism, and I was talking to somebody today that, I want to become this driver where every conversation that I have with people around me should start off with something positive, should start off with something optimistic, because if you bring in the positive energy, you kind of then become more infectious and start delivering it to people in their lives as well. How do you see rebranding in a very new market condition where there's a possibility of a recession, and there's also, people talking about that we don't have enough budget, or we don't have a lot of money to spend at this time? Not only in this market, I'm not talking about the L&D or HR domain, but I'm talking about in general. We are seeing a trend across the globe at the moment where there is a sense of caution when people are taking or thinking twice before spending money on SaaS products. How do you see rebranding at such a time happening for your company?
Yeah, I'm very much an optimist and a glass half full person, and I always want to put out positivity and optimism in the world because there's enough negativity and doomsaying. But I also, of course, recognize that I'm not a complete moron. I think all of us probably recognize the power of fear. I've just always made it a point to not put more fear out in the world because there's enough of it. But fear is a powerful motivator. So I get it. I mean, you see politicians use it very effectively, businesses. I used to work for a cybersecurity company. That was probably one of the biggest challenges I ever had when I was a CMO of a cybersecurity company, because I told the CEO and the team, we're never going to put out marketing based on fear. And cybersecurity is a lot about protecting your ass from bad things happening. Coming back to your question, the timing and so on. I mean, this is a good lesson for life and in business. Don't wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment doesn't exist. You can keep waiting your whole life. Like, what does the perfect moment look like for a rebrand? You can keep waiting. Oh, the market conditions have to be just right. The buyers have to just be here. The stars have to align. All this stuff. You have to have the right amount of money. You can keep waiting. It's the same in your life. Like when you're trying to face these big decisions. And at some point, you're going to have to make a decision with imperfect data, right? And so this is where I think about you operate kind of at these different levels, tactical, strategic, and epic. And if you're only operating on tactical, where you're tweaking and optimizing something, you're doing so because it's comfortable and you have a lot of data to guide you. But once you move into the strategic realm, you have some data, but a lot of unknowns. And once you move into the epic realm, it's mostly unknown. There's not really much data to guide you. So if we were looking at a rebrand as an example, what data are you going to look at that's going to guide you to the right decision? I haven't seen it, right? Because it all depends on the moment in time, the company stage, what you're trying to achieve, and so on. At some point, we just had to make the decision, like, we all stand by this. And of course, it's a big decision. It's an emotional decision. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about this stuff, right? Because and brand is an emotional thing. But at some point, you have to just decide. And then everybody else goes along and commits to that decision, right? Whether that they love it or not. Luckily, I think in our case, it was kind of a no-brainer, honestly. Since I've been here, I've had so many conversations about this future of the business and human success. Honestly, for the last 6 months, and every time I talk to somebody, I tell this bigger vision of investing in people, engaging with them more deeply, getting them to achieve their goals. They go, well, why are you called LMS 365 then if you do so much more? So I heard this literally over and over and over and over again, that it became a no-brainer that we had to move beyond that brand. LMS 365 was a very functional brand name. So it was good for two reasons. One is it said exactly what it does, LMS, Learning Management System. And number two, it showed that it's for the Microsoft ecosystem. Beyond that, it's not a great name. I mean, there's no emotional heft to it. It's not very memorable. People would often go when I would mention name, who is it, LMS 360? I'm like, no, it's LMS 365. What is it, LM what? It's like, it's not an easy, it's actually a long thing to say as well. LMS 360, right? 365. So it becomes a long thing. So it became kind of a no-brainer. And then, of course, the question was, how do we then change the brand into something that we are excited by, that we can stand by, and that we think will kind of stand the test of time? That could be an aspirational brand, a positive brand, something that connotes a positive meaning, and so on. And so we went into the engine room and really kind of had a whiteboard and did a lot of work on this as well. But it's one of those things that the kind of the secret of creativity and I think it's really around, you want, of course, some voices, but you also don't want too many, because then oftentimes you end up defaulting to the safe, secure. And I've been in some situations in my career where because we were too many, you can always find reasons not to do something, always, right? And so you end up kind of defaulting to something that's maybe not inspiring. So when I was at LinkedIn, for example, we're about to launch a new product, and our product at LinkedIn was called like LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn Jobs, very like functional names. And then we created a new product that was kind of a game changer for understanding market conditions. And we put it out in a private pilot to about 100 companies around the world. And we called the Project Athena, because it was all about getting wisdom into like the market conditions and so on. And all our customers loved it, and everybody in the team loved it. But then it came time to like actually releasing this product, and we're like, okay, should we call it Project Athena? It's kind of it kind of differs from some of the product names that we have. And is it too bold? Do you understand it? And all this kind of stuff. Then we said, well, maybe we just call it LinkedIn Talent Insights, which again, very functional, says what it does, but pretty uninspiring, honestly. And then I think we did kind of a classic mistake is we said, okay, let's put these two names next to each other and ask people which name they prefer. And so we sent it out, to a bunch of people. And of course, it came back with LinkedIn Talent Insights. You understand what it is. It says it right there on the thing, but it's very uninspiring and not aspirational. So we went with the safe choice. And it's kind of those regrets I have. I'm like, why don't we just push through and we're a little bit more bold? Because it requires courage. Because if we had taken the Athena name, we would have stepped into kind of the unknown in some ways and pushed the boundaries on our brand. But they brought me in to kind of push the boundaries on the brand. But then we ended up defaulting to something I think like just kind of vanilla, honestly. And so I think branding and naming requires a bit of courage. And again, you can either go functional, which a lot of companies, or you can go more aspirational. Like if you think about the Apple product Siri, or Amazon Alexa, or Nike's Pegasus shoe, or whatever it is. These are more aspirational names, right? Or you can go functional, and that can work as well. You got to make a decision at some point. We made the decision for our company name to be much more aspirational.
I think that's a wonderful way to describe that rebranding process, Robin. And I definitely believe that once you do that rebranding, it's also very important for you to communicate in the right way to customers. Because if the rebranding has happened, customers don't know why it happened, what's it all about, what's in it for me, so that they kind of don't understand the rebranding process. They just know, oh, so there's a new name, but I don't know what's in it for me, actually.
But also, to be honest, I don't know if a company needs to understand the process behind. I mean, rebrands happen all the time, right? And there's usually when Facebook renamed from Facebook to Meta, or Google from Google to Alphabet, right? I mean, they're reason because they want to put everything under a bigger umbrella. That's kind of ours. I mean, companies will still buy. So the three products that we sell now as a company is Learn 365, Perform 365, and Engage 365. Kind of like very functional names on it, but they describe what they do. So, but they roll up under the aspirational name of Zensai, right? So, if you just look at those three product names, you can kind of get instantly what they're about, right? And that's kind of the point of this still. So, you want to of course communicate in a way where customers get it. But I don't think they need to be like have an opinion about your full name or be bought into it. I mean, they just need to know that now they're buying from this company and so on. Ideally, of course, over time, don't get me wrong, I would love everybody to fall in love with our name and our vision and so on. But at the end of the day, they are also buying a product or a platform that they can use on a daily basis. They're not buying Zensai, they're buying the products themselves that they're actually using in their teams.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in George as well to this discussion on this topic of human success over generations, because George has been a part of different generations. He has coached and mentored different generations. How do you see, George, you define human success for different generations? Because currently you're also mentoring students who are like millennials or Gen Z. How do you think the definition of human success has changed over the years? That's a question for you, George. And if you have any follow-up to Robin, you can continue on that.
So with regards to human success or what is success, there's been a dramatic change in attitudes and what makes me successful. When I started work, the goal was, you work your 25 years and you get your gold watch and that. It has taken me a long time to accept these horrible young people that go and work somewhere for 5 years, get trained, and then go somewhere else. For me, it's probably only, in all honesty, it's probably only been the last 15 years that I've finally come to accept it. I know a person that was in an IT company, put in a complaint because her direct manager was an alcoholic. The company, in the grand old tradition of boys' club, actually got rid of her rather than the manager. Took them on a wrongful dismissal case, which I actually helped her. Won that case and got them to pay her out. 3 years later, she's back at the same damn company in a senior position. Like,
wow.
it was probably that was the final straw that I finally went, you know what?
Wow.
I've just got to move ahead. And, in a lot of IT, like computers and software and things like that, companies are quite happy for you to work here and go there and come back and go here and go around. So our vision in my generation of you get in and you stay there and you blah 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 and shoulder to the stone, that went long time ago. I'm not sure that it's for the better. And there's certain aspects that I would like to see the generations now go back and have a look at some of the stuff that we silly old grey-haired people did, because it was pretty good stuff. But on the other side of it, I think there's too many people with the same colour hair as me that are still living in the past. And so they're trying to motivate you at your age like me when I was your age. It's a different world.
Yeah.
So for me, the importance of success is for me to understand what's your version of success as your manager, and then help you achieve your success. Now, hopefully your success will somehow align with the company's success. Okay. But the younger generation expects to walk into a job and be on top money from the beginning. They're wrong. Not all of them, but the ones that think like that, they're wrong. The older generation that thinks, oh, I motivate a 27-year-old like I did when I was 27, they're definitely wrong. So yeah, look.
I also think, if I can just comment, I think it's become like hard work has become nearly a bad word in some sense. Like, no, when you're young, you have to work hard. You have to work your ass off to get some momentum. The whole point of being young is you've got more energy, you got more time, work your ass off to create that momentum. Then when you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, it's not that you won't work hard too. I know plenty who work hard at that age too, but you've created some momentum where it's not just about working hard, it's also about working smart. But I think this idea of working hard has gotten a really bad rap. Everybody wants balance now and everything to be like, it's so easy. Easy is not the right word, but you know what I mean? And I feel like I'm constantly coaching you, like, lean into it. Yes, maybe work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, because there is effort that requires, and it does get noticed. It really does. I can tell,
And sadly, Robin, I blame people in my profession. A lot of people in my profession, business coaches and mentors and motivational blokes and blah, blah, blah. They go yelling out and saying to people, you don't have to work hard, you have to work smart. Well, that's the same with my children when they went to school. Some genius taught that generation that you had privileges. What they forgot to teach them was every privilege comes with a responsibility, and every responsibility should come with a privilege. But that generation and the generation since, they've all been told about their rights, their privileges, and their what they're allowed and what people can't do. But they've not been taught enough about what you should do. Success, Sarab, as you know, I'm not money motivated. That doesn't mean that I don't like money, but my successes are not. I don't talk about, when people say to me, "Oh, what's your greatest success?" It's not about having houses and cars and all of that sort of stuff. I've got a drawer in my wardrobe with letters of thanks from people that say, "You got me to where I am." So to me, I'm one of the most successful people I know, because I've got legacies in a whole heap of people that are 30 years younger than me, and that'll continue on. Now, there'll be people that'll say, oh, yeah, he's a bit of a tosser. If you're not making big money and you can't do this and you can't, that's okay. That's their version of success. So I think the critical thing for people to listen into here, whether you're an employer or an employee, what is your definition of success? And whoever you're working with, either above or below, does your success marry up to their success? And how can you get the two to work? So you've got to calibrate. Okay. So just on names, Robin, you may have heard of this funny little product called WD-40.
I have.
I introduced that to the grocery trade in Australia. So WD-40 is water displacement formula 40, and it was a very successful product.
Yeah.
The same company that had the rights to that had a product that was developed to remove mold from your shower and that. And that company released a product called XL14. At the same time, a company that was because I had XL14, they wanted me to launch it for them. At the same time that I was stuck with that one, a company came out with a product called Exit Mold. Guess which one sold? Because Exit Mold was bland, it was basic, it was, what do you reckon it does? Gets rid of mold.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So then we had another product, which was from the same organization, and they started to learn now. And if you got bitten by a mosquito or a blue bottle or something like that, and your hand is itchy, and they called it Stop Itch.
Yeah.
It sold very well. Excel 14, on the other hand, somebody went, yeah, good idea. So sometimes it can work, and sometimes maybe not.
Absolutely. I was just, before I pass it on to you, Robin, for any final comments, because I'm mindful of your time today. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, I was reading this quote that on hard work and talent. And it said that when talent stops working hard, that's the time when hard work beats talent. So no matter how talented you are in life, the moment you stop working hard, now by working hard, it doesn't mean that you're putting 24/7 efforts. You are working hard, but putting in the efforts in the right direction. And that's what we call a mix of hard work and smart work. People just confuse it all the time. They think that smart work is all about working less. It's not about working less, still putting in the effort, but you put in the effort in the right direction, which kind of guides you in the right way. Which I kind of strongly believe in. And the other thing was this book, which I was reading recently by Tim Duggan. He's launched a book called Work Backwards, which means how people define their life around their work. So he kind of changed the phenomenon. He said you kind of define your define your work around your life, because you can't be dictating your life because of what you are doing. So you need to decide, what does your life really look like? What does success to you look like? How much money do you need to be happy? Now, when you start working backwards, that's how you kind of start figuring out, that's the job I want to do to make me happy. That's the amount of money I need to earn to make me happy, which I really like. And he said, instead of looking at work-life balance, why don't we change the term, switch it around and say life-work balance? I'm like, I've never thought of it that way.
I love it.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful way of reframing it, because I do think work-life balance also just has gotten a little bit of a bad rap, and it's nearly impossible to achieve. How you define that anyway? I mean, if you're ambitious and you want to do well, you got to work hard. I mean, how do you think Michael Jordan got to where he is, or Kipchoge, or Cristiano Ronaldo? Pick anyone, Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or like leaders all around the world. Like, how do you think they got to where they are? They worked hard, and they also worked smart, of course, and they had effort, but hard work. But it also depends on what your initial motivation is. If you're not ambitious, then it's also okay to just recognize that and say, I want a job that just provides this kind of steady state for me, maybe for the next couple of years. And it also depends on, it's so hard to give a generic answer, because it depends on where you are in your life. I mean, my brother has 2 small kids who are very young. They require a lot of effort. Every time I'm with them for 2 hours, I'm exhausted, right? So can he lean into his work as much as if he didn't have those 2 kids? No. And so it's just also a recognition of where you are in your life and what you want to do. And that can change over time. It's not a static where George was when he was 20 versus where he is now. Your motivation changes. Your what you want to achieve changes, of course, as well. But just to kind of wrap up, I think the time is now. I mean, we're living in a world that the data is really a little bit alarming, right? In terms of just how disconnected people feel and unmotivated. And I really, truly believe that now is the time to do the hard work, lean in, invest in your people, motivate your people, figure out what makes them do the best work of their lives. How do you get them to be more successful? I can guarantee if they are more successful, the people who work for you, your business will be way more successful as well. It might not be rocket science, but it's hard work. And I think now is the time to do that hard work.
Really well described there, Robin. And thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you spending another time, another episode recording with us. And I hope this is not the last one, but it's a series of episodes that we definitely want to cover with you. And the next one would be when GenZ has reached the next level. So hopefully in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll interview you again on the next level of GenZ.
Sounds good. George, great to see you. Saurabh, great to see you too. Thank you so much.
This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.